once upon a time, there was a rabbi giving service in his synagogue in Eastern Europe. And he was saying the Shema, and when he gave the Shema, half of the congregation would stand and the other half remain seated, and they would yell at each other. They should stand or they should be sitting. And so there was this big disagreement among them. And finally, somebody suggested to the rabbi, who couldn't figure out what the right thing was. I mean, he thought he knew, but perhaps he didn't, because half the congregation didn't agree with him. And so somebody said, why don't you go visit the oldest member of our congregation? He's 98 now, but he probably remembers. He was one of the founding members. And so ask him what it should be. So the rabbi thought that was a good idea. And he went and he found this elderly gentleman in a retirement home. And he asked him, and he brought one of each member of the congregation, the standing ones and the sitting ones, as a representative. And so he asked the older man, which is it? And the first one, who was one of the standing ones, said, when we say the Shema in service, we stand, don't we? And isn't that the tradition? And the older man said, no, that's not the tradition. And then the other one, who was one of the sitting ones, said, when we say the Shema in service, we sit, don't we? And the older man said, no, that's not the tradition. And the rabbi said, well, what's the tradition then? These two groups are constantly fighting in the midst of service. And the old man said, that's the tradition. So, getting back to the topic today, I'm going to tie it together. But I wanted to read the quote, not the entire quote from the Gita, just one line of it, because it's one of the more mystical portions of the Bhagavad Gita, and I just love it. Krishna says, and let go those rights and writ duties, fly to me alone, give me thy heart. And there is the essence of it. But in every spiritual tradition through the ages, dogmas tend to creep in, like in that synagogue. And it's not just in the synagogue. There was a illustration Swami Kriyananda, Nanda's founder, used to give us from India, where there was a priest giving a certain ritual. And while he was doing it, there was a dog that lived next door with the neighbors. And he just kept running in and interfering and barking and yapping. And so finally the priest asked that someone tie the dog to a post in the neighbor's yard, away from the ritual. And about a year later, the same ritual was being performed, and one person who was present had been present the prior year. And so he went and he found a dog and he tied it to a post because he thought that was part of the ritual. And this new dogma, if you'll pardon the pun, crept in to that tradition. And that's our human nature. That's what happens. One misunderstanding builds upon another misunderstanding, and so it goes on until, like the rabbi, we scratch our heads and we go, now why are we doing this? Why are people doing this? So, give me thy heart, is what Krishna says in the Gita. And think of it this way. And again, this was an illustration Swami used to love to give, which is, if I describe to you what an orange is, the color of the orange, the shape of the orange, the taste I experience with the orange, peeling the orange, on and on, I still won't know what an orange actually tastes like. I have to bite into the orange and taste it for myself. And that's the teaching from ancient India. It offers us techniques that help us to experience the taste of God, the oneness in God, the unity, the ecstasy in God. And so we have to experience the spiritual life for ourselves. I can't tell you what it is. I can't describe to you the joy that I feel in certain moments or practices, or from that beautiful phrase, give me thy heart. The essence of that. We each have to experience that for ourselves. And though the experience might be universal in that it's uplifted, it's going to be unique to each and every one of us because our karma is different. If I have a bottle standing here, a big, tall glass jar bottle, and I fill it with sand and pebbles and marbles and all kinds of things, and maybe I fill it half full, and the one standing next to it, representing another person, is similarly being filled, but it's got a different combination in it, because at any one point in time, our karma is different. And depending on what we've experienced in the inner life to that point, or in life in general, we're going to have a different response than the next person. And that's right. I mean, they say that our spiritual life, liberation, freedom in God, is like snowflakes. No two snowflakes are alike. We each experience it according to our own makeup. And so the aspect of the reading today that I wanted to touch on is the aspect of loyalty as the first law of God. And I say that because the topic is the law is perfected in love. But we can't experience love until we're loyal enough to the efforts to have that experience in order to go deep enough with it to have it to begin with. And so loyalty is a key component of that. And one of my favorite poems is one by Robert Frost, where he says, "The heart can think of no devotion greater than being shoreline to the ocean, holding a curve of one position, counting an endless repetition. Now, to some people, repetition might be not very much fun. But in this context of loyalty and love, that willingness to be on the curve of that one position, that's God. That's God there for us, no matter what we do, no matter how we experience something. God is always there, no matter how big our mistakes are. The curve of one position, that divinity, that infinity is always present, is always there. And there's another quality that comes to my mind when thinking of love, of the law being perfected in love. In other words, the law is not perfect, but it is perfected in love. And that's the quality of truthfulness. There's an illustration that I've loved to give through the years of the woman who came with her child to see Gandhi. And just when she got up to Gandhi, there was a line people were going through. She asked him, "Can you please tell my daughter not to eat sweets?" And Gandhi said, "Please come back next week." And so the lady was a little puzzled, but she went home with her daughter, and she came back a week later, and she got through the line, and when they got up to Gandhi, Gandhi said to the little girl, "I'm going to suggest to you not to eat sweets." And the mother said, "Why couldn't you have said that a week ago?" And he said, "A week ago, I was still eating sweets." You see, what he said had to be rooted in truth. And if we look for it, we don't have to go outside of ourselves. We don't have to go in line to meet a famous world leader like Gandhi to have to experience truthfulness. Swami Kriyananda gives the illustration that actually we experienced it with him, Riemann and I. We were with him in Assisi, Italy, and we had just been to the Portiuncula, the chapel that St. Francis had built that became encased later, centuries later, into a giant cathedral. So there's this little tiny chapel he built inside this big place. Anyway, we had meditated there for a while. And then when we left there, there was a newspaper stand across the street where Swami used to enjoy buying the Herald, so he could read an English newspaper. And we went there, but Swami was late for an appointment, so he told the newsstand man who had become his friend, "I'm going to get a paper, but I need to run an errand first. I'll be back." So we went on the errand with him. He had an appointment. It was way on the other side of town. And by the time he was done with the appointment, it was late in the day. And we assumed we were close to where we'd need to be to go back to Ananda's retreat center near Assisi. So we assumed we'd be going back. But he said, "No, I promised the man I would get the paper." He drove all the way back. It was like, 25 minutes back and then 25 minutes out again. It was practically adding an hour to the day because he had promised the man. He had told the man. He didn't even say, I promise. He had simply told the man that he would be back to get the paper. So he went back to get the paper. And what struck me is I saw this theme in Kriyananda's life again and again. There was a time when I was managing the publishing department that we had sent one of our staff to Southern California on a sales trip to visit bookstores and place our books in the stores. And suddenly, in Northridge, which was where this man was doing the sales that day, there was that big earthquake that happened some years ago, and the town was just rumbling in the earthquake. And we were really worried about our coworker, our friend. And this was before cell phones, so I couldn't even try to call him or contact him. And so at a certain point, a couple of hours later, he called us. And he said, and I was with Kriyananda at that moment, and he said, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm packing my things, I'm coming right home. And I passed that information on to Kriyananda, and Kriyananda said, no, let me talk with him. And he took the phone and he said, no, you stay there. He said, you know, we said we were going to be there. You should keep your word and stay there. And we should not let the destructive force of the earthquake change our word. And my friend just went, I could hear him through the phone, but sir, he said, the stores are a shambles. Everything is on the ground. You know, all the staff is busy putting things back together. It's a mess down here. And Swami said, well, go back and help them put their stores back together. And it was a real, I mean, my friend was not happy about that suggestion of Swami's, but he could see the wisdom in it. And what I realized is that it was compassion. My friend got a taste for compassion, for not thinking about himself, for not giving in to fear, and to, at a difficult time, to go out and help others. And in reflecting on this, we don't have to go looking for it. We don't have to invent situations. We don't have to create these circumstances. These were everyday circumstances that just happened in life. And so we can meet everyday circumstances that happen in life with compassion, with love, with truthfulness, with all the qualities that Patanjali talks about in the Yoga Sutras, all the qualities that Christ talks about in the commandments. It's all there. If we look for it, we will all find moments in our lives, many, many moments in our lives, where we can practice love through those qualities.